Today on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with the messmaker, That Kyle. What do you like about wrestling?
What do I like about wrestling? I like that it's everything. I like that it's comedy, drama, horror at times, it's everything that anybody could ever want from entertainment. That's what I love about it.
When did you first become a fan? Like, when did it hit your radar?
When I was super duper young, I was born in 1993. My mom would have it on the television. Like I remember because she was a wrestling fan. Like she had the Raw magazines and everything. And she went to WrestleMania 6. She was in the crowd for that, which was pretty cool. The only one in her section screaming for Ultimate Warrior. She did not want Hulk Hogan to win. But when Warrior did get pinned, she was the only one in her whole section screaming for him. So that's great. And so it was always sort of part of my life in one way or another. I didn't really get super into it until around grade 7 or 8. I met a guy named Phil in a class of mine, and he was a WWE fan. And this is like 2007. So my first WrestleMania that I watched was at WrestleMania 23, and then that's really how I kind of fell in love with it. And I've got the video games like the Legends of Wrestling, so I discovered a lot of the old guys too by playing that. And then YouTube was a thing not too long later. So just everything that I could search for, I was in on it.
Careful, some of the young listeners might not realize there was a time before YouTube.
Oh my gosh, yes. See, the kids, there was this time called 2008.
Hey, I started watching wrestling with tape trading, so
Oh
it's a
wow.
completely different time.
Oh
So
wow.
it started off as a family thing, and then it became more of a social event with your friends. As you're watching, as you're starting to become like a regular fan, what is it that's attracting you? Are there any performers, any matches that really stand out to like kind of were like triggers for you? Like this is what it's all about for me.
Well, I always kind of wanted to be an entertainer, like an actor or something like that. I tried stand-up comedy. That's like something I wanted to do for talent shows and all that. And basically, when I found wrestling, I was like, okay, so this is literally everything that I want to do. So I want to do this now. When I saw guys like Roddy Piper was number one for me, like genuine, like everything that he had going on with, especially with the mouthpiece that he had. You know what I mean? Like that I knew after seeing him that I could possibly, make a run at being a pro wrestler. So it was definitely like Roddy Piper, and later on Chris Jericho was like probably the main guiding force was Chris Jericho, probably especially toward my like high school years when I was like attempting to train to become a wrestling student by taking every drama course that I could and every weight room course and all the, kinesiology I took even. It's
That's
just so I
not
can learn about muscles and stuff.
that's not a bad idea. So you
Yeah.
always wanted to entertain. You always had that element of you. Were you also kind of athletic? Did you have that kind of background, or was that something that was a little bit more newly introduced, so to speak?
Well, like I'll put it to you this way, guys like Mick Foley and like Raven and like guys like that, guys that wore shirts were like they were always my favorite. I was a fat kid growing up, like real fat. Like I probably had my heaviest was probably about 220, and I'm not very tall. I'm like 5'10" and probably back then even shorter, so I looked like a chipmunk, right? So I didn't really the looks wise, I knew that that was going to be an issue, but I knew that if I could like have enough personality or talk or whatever, that I could pretty much get by without any athletic, But I did take weight room and I took every gym, class that they would give me, and I played intramural dodgeball, like you know what I mean. But like I was never really into sports. Like friends of mine were into hockey and stuff, but like I could never really get into it.
So was it almost immediately that you thought wrestling could be an avenue for you, or was it something like later on that you realized perhaps I can do this? Because I know some people watch it and they're fine with that. I'm good just watching. I don't need to do it myself. So was it kind of like a day one thing for you? You were like, hey, this might be an avenue for you, or was that kind of did that come down the road?
Once I figured out that there was wrestling training available, like within driving distance, I suppose, I was pretty set on being, a wrestler. And I figured like I had blinders on because I have an ADHD. You know what I mean? I went undiagnosed for a very long time, so I tend to over fixate on things, and I tend to ultra focus on things, and I had tunnel vision. I was just like, I am going to be a pro wrestling superstar, however way I can get in, because you see like the Miz, right? Like he came in with reality TV, and he was one of my favorites. You know what I mean? Wore a shirt, of course. And and he had a mohawk, and I thought that was dope. Um, so it was mostly that I knew that I could get in other avenues other than just being an athlete, if you will.
Mm. So, what was the trigger event for you that actually caused you to like go and pursue wrestling school? Like, where were you at in life? How did you actually see that there was a local one? Like, what actually drove you to take that first step?
Well, definitely Google. I Googled pro wrestling schools, right? And there were a few. There was Squared Circle, which is the one I ended up going to, trained by Rob Fuego. And then there was others, like there was the one called Figure Four with Chris Garvin, which I also went to for a second. And there was Super Kicked in Toronto. They might have been called something else at the time. I don't remember. But basically there were places to go. So once I figured that out, it was just like where from there. And I was like, okay, North York. I'm like, my friend lives in Richmond Hill. I can move in with my friend in Richmond Hill and go to North York via buses to be able to go and train to be a wrestler. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And I knew that from like grade 9, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I just basically tried to prepare myself my entire high school experience to become a pro wrestling trainee, if you will.
All right, so you take that leap, you start out wrestling training. How are you feeling about it? Was it everything you had hoped for? Was maybe the physical component a little bit tougher than you expected? Like, how did you feel finally starting wrestling training after wanting it for so long?
If I'm being 100,000% honest, especially right at the time, embarrassed. All
Okay.
right. I was embarrassed because I showed up late to
Oh.
class. It was the second Saturday of January of 2012 was my very first pro wrestling class, and the website said 1 o'clock. So, or no, sorry, the website said 3. So I showed up at like 2:30 because I was like, oh, I'm gonna be like, early, right? It's gonna be awesome. And I show up and they'd already been there for an hour or whatever because they changed it since then, but didn't change it on the website. So I
Oh.
show up, it was like an hour into class, and I was just like thinking that I was going to be early. So of course I'm just like everything's kerfuffled at that point. So I walk in and everybody's in the ring, and like there's two rings and an office little part and a little part to change. And so one like sort of advanced classes going on in the far ring, and then the closer ring has like first timers pretty much, right? So the trainer Rob Fuego, he gets me to sign everything, and I give him my $2,000 or whatever, right? And he puts me in the ring, and the first thing I do is learn how to do a headlock, and it took me 26 tries to learn how to do the headlock correctly. So if that tells you anything about first day pro wrestling training, when you think that you are going to know something, and then they show you something as simple as what you think will be simple as a headlock, and it takes you 26 tries to learn how to do it correctly.
Well,
I
I mean, I
counted.
guess get the worst behind you right away. How did it get a little bit easier as time went on? Did you start to get a little bit more comfortable?
Eventually, obviously, because like I was locked in because I was living with a friend of mine and his family, so it's not like I could just go, home or whatever, right? It's like this is why I'm here in this city or whatever. This is why I'm here for this wrestling, and I paid the 2,000 for the full experience. You know what I mean? Not monthly, but like you get to come whenever you want at that point. Then, which was the deal, and so. I'm trying to be kind of like nice to the people that trained me because they were cool and it was a different time. It was 2012. There was a whole lot of bullying and like I was a super easy target, like the most easy target because I had like ADHD, like I said, and I don't really quite get social cues sometimes, and I've been taken advantage of a lot where it's like I'm just really gullible and I'm really easy to take advantage of. And I'm really, you know what I mean? Just basically that kind of person. So they took advantage. They called me names. This one guy bullied me so hard. He called me Sloth from the Goonies. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like, yeah, man, like it was nuts. And of course, I don't have like the best teeth in the world. Like I said, ADHD, and I got a battery thrown at them when I was a kid. And we
oh
could only
man.
kind of, yeah, we could only kind of fix them. You know what I mean? We weren't a rich family. So I've had problems my whole life with bullying issues and whatever. So like when I finally got to wrestling school, I was like, more than anything, it was like I can just prove to these guys that like I can do this or whatever, even though I'm a fat kid and I'm, you know, not athletic or whatever. Like I can make a go at this type of thing. So it became spite was
Oh.
the motivation. Spite is a powerful motivator.
I mean, that sounds like a lot to have to overcome, and spite can definitely be a motivator. Did you have any sort of support system to help you through it as well? Maybe some peers or friends or like just anybody that you could lean on? Like, how do you, I mean, that's a lot to overcome. How do you keep going? Spite can't be enough.
You know what's crazy is I kind of didn't. It took me a very long time to get anywhere when it came to making friends, especially I come from Lindsay, Ontario. It's a very small town, a very tight-knit town, sort of like everybody kind of knows everybody type of thing. And to move to Toronto, like Richmond Hill, was number one. It's very shocking, and taking a bus somewhere was crazy to me. You could bike anywhere in my town and get there in 20 minutes. So that whole thing was crazy for me, and these guys are so used to it. Some of them are from there, everything. So like I don't know, I just feel like every opportunity they could kind of, every little dig they could get, they really took. And I really took it as motivation. Like I can do this, I can make you change your mind, which a lot of them didn't, but like whatever. But like I got better and like you said, comfortable, and eventually I earned respect. Like the guy who called me Sloth gave me a fist bump and called me Kyle. You know what I mean? Like he never called me Kyle before, and then I did good one time and he gave me a fist bump. He said, "Good job, Kyle." I was like, "All
Uh,
right."
so how long were you training before you got to have like a taste of in-ring action?
So I started 2nd January of 2012, and I had my first in-ring something. I was in a battle royal, December of that year, in Hamilton, for a charity show, before the match or before the matches started, battle royal, dark match or whatever. And I didn't have my first one-on-one until 2013 in September. So there was a big jump there.
Okay. And do you remember how you felt about that? Was it kind of validating? Was it a little overwhelming that this was everything you worked for? Or did that just, you didn't have time to think about it? It was just go out there and do like, how did you feel about that first match looking back at it now?
Well, to be honest, like the first battle, like the battle royal, like I traveled for 3 hours or whatever. My nana and papa drove me, and came and watched the show. And I was in the ring for maybe like a minute. You know what I mean? Before I was eliminated, by Tommy Powers. You know what I mean? And so they drove a long way for not a whole lot. And I had a whole gimmick that I thought was going to be good. Like all us trainees think we are going to have this cool gimmick, right? With all this, stuff or whatever. So, there's all that. And of course, later on when I had my very first match, one-on-one against Shane Saber in Hamilton. He, was so incredible. He's incredible now, but like even back then was so incredible. He basically carried me through the match with a broken ring. The ropes didn't work, you see. So we
Oh.
had this whole thing, figured out, and then, we saw the first match happen with the guys hitting the ropes and the ring was moving. It's very intimidating. So he's like, "All right, remember all that ring? I remember all that rope shit we talked about? None of that." So we had a match with barely any ropes, and afterwards he had his critiques that he gave me, but other than there wasn't much bad about it, and I liked it. I still have it. I think I should bring back some of the moves I used to use back then.
Wow, you have not had good luck with wrestling firsts, it seems.
No, I'm like Chris Jericho. I got the Jericho curse. I'm terrible.
So you mentioned your first gimmick. just in a little bit more of a general sense, did you kind of always have an idea of like who you wanted to put out there? Like what kind of image of yourself you wanted to portray that you wanted an audience to come out of thinking about you specifically?
I've always been kind of like a punk gothy kind of person, like alternative, if you will. That's always kind of been like my, the way I like to do things. And so my first gimmick was that of a British punk rocker.
Okay.
So I was see, I had the fake British voice, you see. So I'd come into the arena, I'd be talking like this, right? And like even during training, I'd be training myself, right? So I'd be talking like this to the people, which is something else that they used to make fun of me about. But yeah, so much so with the British thing that there were actually like wrestlers that thought that I was from England, and when they found out that I wasn't, I got heat because they thought I was trying to work the boys. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to make this character work, dude. I don't know what that is. I'm 18, 19 years old. I don't know nothing. What are you talking about?
So really like who you are now is kind of just a tweaked version of who you kind of always been without maybe the foreign gimmick attached to it.
See, the only reason it was going to be British was because I wanted to get away with having bad teeth, dude. I'm like, they won't question it if I'm from England.
So obviously you got through all of the training. You're an active wrestler today.
Yes.
In your history, is there been like a highlight match of your career so far? Not necessarily for quality, just maybe like at a time in your life where you're like, I can't believe I'm in the ring with this person, or wow, we won over this crowd, or just like some reason to have a match that stands out as like a personal highlight.
Oh geez. In terms of like personal highlights, like I've been in the ring with a couple of like heroes that I really loved from like way back when, including like the Green Phantom, who I'm a huge fan of and have been for so long since I saw him in Tournament of Death 3 against the Necro Butcher when I was in high school. I saw that on YouTube, and it was one of the coolest things I ever seen. When I found out that he was from Canada, I had the same reaction as when I found out Wolverine was from Canada. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, my boy. You know what I mean? So it's like, Green Phantom being in the ring with him was amazing, and being able to tag team with him has been just amazing. I've been able to learn so many cool things, and especially when it comes to working the audience, Green Phantom just kills it. Madman Pondo, who's huge, I've loved since I used to watch him on JCW on YouTube, right? And I got to be in the ring with him, and I got to take his offense and whatever, and that's a huge badge of honor for me. And speaking of guys that I love that I got to take their offense, the Sandman. I was in the ring with the Sandman, and I took the cane from the
Wow.
Sandman 4 times, and he gave me a nice little scar on my back. He hit me real hard, and so that's another good. There's been a few highlights like that where I've just been so fortunate to just kind of be there. You know what I mean? Um, Funny story. I actually pissed off Tommy Dreamer.
Okay.
Um, he got mad at me for real, and I deserved it too. And what it is was I was trying to get him. I have social anxiety, like you read about, like so incredibly bad, to the point where I literally thought this was a good idea. I was like, okay, so Tommy Dreamer's over here, he's signing some stuff, and I'm like, okay, what if I just have like a video going, right? And I can do the Ricky Steamboat Chris Jericho thing, where Chris Jericho kind of is over here, and he kind of goes like this with the camera, and it's just like, hey Ricky, and he turns his head and he gets the selfie, right? And I was like, okay, like I'm gonna do that like this kind of, and he thought I was live streaming. And he
Uh,
got very angry, and he's like, "Is that live?" I was like, "No, no, no!" And I'm trying to explain to him, like, "No, I'm just some like anxious kid who wants to meet you because I love you, and I'm so sorry that I couldn't ask like a human being, like an adult, for a picture, right?" Like, and he dressed me down in front of everybody. Oh, it was terrible getting dressed down by one of my favorites on the planet for being an idiot.
that's amazing, actually. I mean,
uh,
yes, bad situation, good story, right?
right? Oh man, I still feel shame for that to this day.
Well, at least you're letting everybody know.
Oh, somebody has to know.
Let's talk dream opponents. Who is it that's still on the wrestling bucket list for you?
Oh man, basically in terms of like hardcore, like deathmatch wrestling is like where my love lies and whatever. So a lot of my dream matches are from guys that do that. So Neil Diamond Cutter is one of them. Legend. Sexy Eddie is another. Let's say Matt Tremont, the Bulldozer, number one. Guys like hmm, I'm thinking about it. Now that I'm thinking about it, somebody like Matt Cardona would be amazing. You know what I mean? Like some guy that's been there, done that, everything, can probably wrestle a good match with a broom, which is, with me is something that he'll definitely need as a skill set. Uh, but yeah, no, guys like him, who have been around and stuff, like I don't want to go to WWE, I don't want to go to AEW, but to wrestle guys that have been there, totally, any day, I love that. And Akira, I would like to say Akira is like probably my number one top. He's the same age as me. We wrestle the same style. He's amazing. I look up to him, and I really do wish one day to have a match with him.
Okay, so you brought up, hardcore wrestling, deathmatch wrestling, things like that. I haven't spoken to a lot of people that participate in that particularly. Just, I don't know if this is actually something that is able to be answered, but when you're heading into a match like that, where you know that your body is in for a lot more punishment than a traditional wrestling match, is there any sort of trepidation, any hesitation? Like, how do you kind of prepare yourself to punish yourself?
Well, like I said, I grew up a lot, like with a lot of bullying in my life, and that wasn't just at school, that was like at home too. I had a stepdad that wasn't, he didn't appreciate my existence. So, he made me feel that, you know what I mean? And, that's the thing, there was never physical violence in my house. It was more of a, I'm gonna throw some shit against the wall type of thing, or I'm going to yell at you, I'm going to call you names, I'm going to, make you feel like you're nothing. You know what I mean? And going to be nothing. And so I have experienced so much like pain and like trauma, growing up, that it makes me feel better knowing that I can withstand that sort of pain on the outside as well, and wear those scars that the glass and the barbed wire and all this stuff give me, and it just shows me that I can withstand anything. I can get through things. I'm, resilient. I'm I can make it through.
It's almost like you've built up emotional calluses, right? Like you've kind of built like a harder shell to be able to withstand that kind of thing.
Sure, and it speaks to my emotional side as well, but like my physical side, I've never really been in a real fight. I got a few things like that in my past, but not nothing really crazy. So to kind of go through that sort of pain, I'm not sure how deep we're supposed to get here, but I used to be a self-harming person. I used to be a self-harm person. So, and I quit, not doing that anymore. You start getting tattoos, you start doing other things, to kind of, punish yourself for being alive, because that's what you feel like you need to do for some reason. And I've loved hardcore wrestling forever, and I've always wanted to do it, and I got the opportunity to, and I was told that I was good enough to keep doing it. So I just expanded my horizons. I keep, pushing myself further, doing different things, and it's really helped me as a human being, like really showing me that I can get through things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It inspires me to do better the next day. And I hope people that watch me do that sort of thing, they kind of get the same thing in their head. It's like I can get through my day, tomorrow at work or at school, or, I can, get past this nonsense.
It seems like you've really seen all the extremes of emotional highs, emotional lows, things like that. Has there been like a piece of advice or a compliment that just kind of floored you that like you carried with you that kind of helped push you through just the tough days, really?
Oh my gosh. I appreciate any positive feedback that I get. I was kind of broken as a child when it comes to actually being able to absorb compliments or anything like that. It's kind of weird for me, but I do appreciate it. Like anybody that takes that sort of time to kind of tell me, like, yo, I loved that thing you did or whatever, or like, any little thing. I always appreciate it so much, to the point where these people probably think I'm weird because I'm so thankful, slobberingly grateful for any bit of external validation. But But yeah, like I said in wrestling school, the guy who used to call me Sloth, him and I are actually really good friends now. He used to bully me very badly. So when he called me by my real name and he gave me that fist bump and he said, good job, Kyle. You know what I mean? Like that stuck with me forever. Green Phantom, messaging me saying that, he had fun or that, that I need to get a hold of him when I'm in Montreal next, things like that. Just the validation that what I'm doing is good in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? Producing something positive, you know?
Outs Outstanding, man. Outstanding. Let's sidestep out of the ring a little bit. You got some time off. You got some time to yourself. Like what kind of stuff do you like to do to entertain yourself, to pass the time?
Well, I'm a big horror movie fan. I really like horror movies a whole lot, and movies in general. I'm one of those nerds that knows actors and where they were, everything they've done. And you can ask me who played this guy in this movie, and I know exactly who you're talking about. I love playing. I'm not a video game guy, but if I find one game that I like, I'll just play it to ad nauseum. And right now, it's Fallout 4 because I really loved the Fallout TV show on Prime, and I decided to give Fallout 4 a shot over it. And I've been playing it since April, and I'm still into it. I love it.
So you're a big horror movie fan. Like, do you have a favorite
Oh yeah.
franchise or favorite like horror villain type thing?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I have some of them tattooed on me. I have Captain Spaulding here from the Firefly franchise. I got, Freddy Krueger on the phone over here. I got Chucky here. So yeah, like a lot of horror movie references like are tattooed on me and stuff. I got this chainsaw because of Evil Dead, you know what I mean? Like so there's a whole lot, man. As I look around my room and I see, the collection of DVDs that I have, I got Halloween, I got all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, all the, Friday the 13th. I love 80s slashers that are just awful, like Tourist Trap and like, anything by Charles Band, you know what I mean? Like I'll watch like the Full Moon features and stuff. Anything by Roger Corman, anything that's ever been on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, like I'm talking like anything like that. I love those things.
All right.
Slackier the better.
All right, so challenge time then. Recommend for us one 80s slasher movie that is not like the big name mainstream, Friday the 13th, like not, I mean, even like a chopping mall, like something that
Ah,
perhaps people don't know as well. Recommend, put it out there.
I love Chopping Mall number one. Okay. There's this movie called Blood Rage, and it's gone through like several names. In fact, I'm pretty sure when the movie comes up, it's a different like title card than what the name is of the movie is. And it's so bonkers. Like it goes everywhere. Like it's about this guy whose brother, he framed his brother as a child for a murder, okay? And so this guy lives out his whole life. Meanwhile, his brother's in the penitentiary, right? And he finally gets out when they're adults, right? And like this other guy, this the twin snaps in his head, so he starts killing all these everybody, right? And there's like subplots. It's so crazy and like so quotable, and takes place around Thanksgiving. So like it's the main thing that everybody brings away from this is oh, that's not cranberry sauce, Artie. Talk about blood, right? It's like that's not cranberry sauce. Or like Ice Cream Man when he's like, that's grenadine for my ice cream treats. Or like, definitely, Sleepaway Camp. Sleepaway Camp, number one. Everybody go out and watch Sleepaway Camp if you haven't, because it's awesome. So many quotes in that movie, like eat shit and die, but eat, blow, and live. You know what I mean? Like that's amazing. I love that. Somebody needs to use it in a promo. Um, the beginning part with Aunt, I forget the aunt's name, but it's the aunt at the beginning. Her performance is worth the whole movie, dude.
That's awesome, man. I can definitely feel the passion, and I'm glad that you embrace it, right? Like
Ah,
you obviously have to dedicate a lot to wrestling, but there's got to be an escape sometimes. You got to recharge the batteries, and hey, if horror movies is your thing, do what you love, right?
Yeah, I was told a long time ago not to make one thing your whole thing because once that thing goes away, what do you do? You know what I mean? So I got all kinds of different things that I try to get into. I try to be a filmmaker a little bit. I edit videos. I do a whole bunch of stuff, trying to keep my eggs in other baskets.
So before we sign off, I'm just going to ask you one thing that I ask everybody before we sign off. If you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice to when you were starting out in your wrestling training, or even somebody who's starting wrestling training now, if you were to give them one piece of advice, what would you tell them, just to help them along?
Something that I was told way too late in my wrestling career, and that's keep your mouth shut and your eyes open and your ears open. That's one thing. The other is slow down. Even when you think you're going slow enough, slow down some more. And when you think that's too slow, slow down some more. You know, and tr don't date anyone in the wrestling business. That's the advice that I would give myself. Uh,
Listen, it has been an absolute pleasure. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. Before we sign out, can you just once again let people know who you are and maybe where they can follow you on social media if they just want to keep up to date with what you got going on?
okay, well, I'm that Kyle, and I am the reigning Frantic Pro Wrestling Blood on the Fur Deathmatch champion, and I will be defending said belt on February 22nd against Neil Diamond Cutter. That's going to be amazing. And you can see me on YouTube at that Kyle. You can see me on Instagram at yeah that Kyle. And don't look for me on Facebook. And I have nothing else, so no Spacebook or my face. So,
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
oh, thank you. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.